think then Bangladesh is on its way to become Pakistan 2.0?
He sees Bangladesh as the next cradle of Islamic civilization. In the early 30s, when Hitler just came to power, the harassment that the Jewish had to go through, it just started that. I mean, in the first phase, the 49 Hindu teachers were forced out, that Bangladesh needs to be nuclearized.
Once again, the situation in Bangladesh has flared up. Hindus have been protesting against their persecution. They're voicing their concerns about rampant attacks in the country. And remember, this comes after a brief pause in the demonstrations after interim government led by Muhammad Yunus gave assurances to the minority community. But despite that, Hindu homes and temples have been attacked. So to explain to us what's happening in Bangladesh and where is the country headed, I'm being joined by someone who's been closely tracking the developments in the country, Rana Hassan Mahmud. He's a political analyst based in Los Angeles, and he's also the General Secretary of USA Bangabandhu Parishad. So thank you, Mr. Rana, for joining us on India Today Global.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Mr. Rana, first let's address the elephant in the room. Since the ouster of Sheikh Hasina from Bangladesh, thousands of incidents of violence against Hindus have been reported, and of course, there's so much more that goes unreported, right? And despite assurances from the government, protests and violent incidents continue to flare up. So if you could just explain to us what's the situation right now on the ground with regard to minorities, especially Hindus.
Okay, thank you for your question and thank you for having me. The situation is extremely bleak for the minorities on ground in Bangladesh since August 5th. You just mentioned that there has been assurance by the authority for their protection, but that was just an assurance. There was no action taken on the ground. The most conservative estimation by the pro Dr. Yunus newspaper, which is widely circulated in Bangladesh, is Prothom Alo. And they reported between 5th August and 20th of August, there has been more than 1,000 homes and businesses completely gutted down, belong to the Hindu community. 22 mandirs have been destroyed. But the problem is, this is not reported into the mainstream media in Bangladesh. Exact situation is still much more bleak. I have some first-hand information. Those who have been, their family has been living in the United States. The entire village has been evacuated. So what they're doing, the present administration and their supporting elements, principally Jamaat-e-Islam, they're using a fear tactics so that the Hindus leave the country. As you can see, last Friday, there has been a pretty large demonstration by the Hindu communities in Chittagong and in Dhaka. And they were determined that they will be staying in this country, against all threats. So they will be staying in this country, and any plan to evacuate them or through fear and intimidation probably is not going to work, but that creates the risk on their lives and the safety of the minority community in Bangladesh.
All right. So, with the way you have described the situation and how it's currently unfolding in the country, who do you think is actually calling the shots? Is it Dr. Muhammad Yunus, who's the head of interim government? Is it Jamaat-e-Islami or Bangladesh National Party, or in fact any other political faction?
This is a very interesting question. Just let me, at 2 weeks ago, the present government's advisor for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, he was saying that he does not know who is actually calling the shot. The students are running the country. He doesn't know whether his advisory committee is running the country. He doesn't know whether Jamaat-e-Islam is running the country. He does not know. The problem is the buck stops at Dr. Yunus. He, he's a Nobel laureate. He made himself a big name around the world. That's a different discussion. But the world should hold him accountable because he is the, chief executive at this point in Bangladesh. So that's where everybody should uh, ask him and hold him accountable for whatever is happening here right now in Bangladesh. And unfortunately, he gave, speech to the nation and other things that he did, but he did not mention any specific action that he would be taking to stop this violence. He just urged people to come down, but that's just a rhetoric. Obviously, his right hand arm is Jamaat-e-Islam. I mean, what happened from August 5th till now, they're calling the shots on the ground. They're very organized, very lethal, extremely virulent against the minority communities, always have been. They have a genocidal past, so they're calling the shots. On top of that, if you see the statement by Sarjis Alam, who is one of the key coordinators, student coordinators, he mentioned that the Hindu community brought this upon themselves. Why? Because according to him, traditionally Hindu communities always support Awami League. So supporting or not supporting any specific political party prohibits their right of citizenship, basically. That's what he's saying. So it is an open-ended situation. It is extremely bleak, and we will be urging the world community to hold Dr. Yunus accountable for what is happening on the ground.
So then my question to you is, do you think Muhammad Yunus is too weak to lead the country at a time when the country is in such a volatile state?
Well, first of all, Dr. Yunus was leading Grameen Bank.
Yes.
He had very little connection with the history and culture of Bangladesh. And I say it loudly and clearly because he has been absent to any crisis in Bangladesh. He has been absent to our national days. He has been absent during our, Independence Day or uh, Victory Day or, the Martyrs Day, 21st February. I mean, he has no connections with the political spectrum or political process. So he has been planted in, as we know how he got in power. So I don't think he has that grassroots level organization or capability to hold this country together. But that's why Jamaat Islam has filled in the gap. And as you can see, his statement when he already accepted this chief executive post on August 5th or 6th. He gave two interviews, one with the French media and one with an Indian media.
Yes.
And he blamed all the anarchy upon the prime minister who was ousted from the power. So this itself, that he is giving a blank check for committing crimes. Cultural genocide has been happening in Bangladesh. The Awami League workers and leaders are going through a program, basically. The minority communities are bearing the brunt of it. So he has given a blank check for those hooligans. And on top of that, he released the most dreaded terrorists in Bangladesh, Ansarullah Chief, and some other, extremely virulent criminals. He just freed them into the society. So definitely the buck stops at Dr. Yunus, and he has to be held accountable. And whether he's weak or not is not the question at this point. The point is he's failing completely to protect the lives and the properties and the religious freedom of the country.
Okay, so since we are talking about the role of political factions in the country, how much role do you think they played in Sheikh Hasina's ouster? Like we know, it was a student-led movement. Later, it was hijacked by political forces. So how do you think that played out?
Okay, the thing is, the news are coming out, from different sources, and it's pointing to one direction, that there has been a plot done, domestic or international, both cases, to force Sheikh Hasina out of power. And that has been hatching since 2019, because if you look at the movement, it doesn't have a logical basis because they didn't want the quota. and Sheikh Hasina government removed the quota in 2018. It was the court's verdict that was controversial. Now, if you look at the recent interview given by Hizbut Tahrir's spokesperson, uh, they say that they were behind this movement, but they did not come in the surface because they're hated by the people. Jamaat-e-Islami leaderships, they also said they were behind this movement, but they did not come in the front face. Even today or yesterday, BNP's Mr. Fakrul, he said that out of some 800 who were killed during this movement, 422 of them were BNP activists. So you can see there's many actors in the field who played the role, and it was fueled by the present law advisor, Dr. Asif Nazrul, when he said there's 26 lakhs Indians working in Bangladesh. And to come back to your first point, there was a memo, internal memo, released by the Ministry of Jute and Textile to sort out the Hindu officers into the department. It's just like, I wrote in one of my pieces that in the early 30s, when Hitler just came to power, the harassment that the Jewish had to go through, it just started that. In the first phase, there's 49 Hindu teachers were forced out. So it is clearly an anarchy, and the present administration has to be held responsible, irrespective of who the players behind it.
So tell me this, Mr. Rana, we have seen recent incidents like the commemoration of the death anniversary of Muhammad Ali Jinnah in Dhaka. It was celebrated with Urdu poetry and songs. There were even statements made like that there would be no Bangladesh had Jinnah not been there. And at the same time, we have seen targeted attacks on the symbols which are associated with the Bangladesh's War of Independence, like Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's statues. So do you think at this juncture, Bangladesh is writing its own history, or also, if I may say, distorting its own history?
Distorting, of course, and rewriting, they're trying to. And that is being done by a very small riffraffs, but they're powerful right now. They are they have been always in the fringe, but they're very powerful because they're very close to the power circle. So if you look at the advisor to the chief advisor, Mr. Mahfouz, he's openly saying that he sees Bangladesh as the next cradle of Islamic civilization, so forth and so on. Unfortunately, those people who celebrated commemorated Mr. Jinnah's death anniversary had a very little knowledge about Mr. Jinnah. So it was symbolic that they're trying to basically make bigger friendship with Pakistan or negate our liberation war and liberation movement. But most importantly, today, Mr. Shahiduzzaman, Dr. Shahiduzzaman, a professor from Dhaka University, he mentioned that Bangladesh needs to be nuclearized, not in the sense of making atomic bombs, but in the sense of becoming a nuclear ally of Pakistan to combat India. So this is all happening again under the watch of Dr. Yunus, and he's silent. So, this is unfortunate that our history has been erased. All the sculptures and statues and all the monuments have been basically erased within the first few days, and Dr. Yunus had nothing to say about it. So he's trying to rewrite the history in his own way.
All right. So India has been sheltering Sheikh Hasina, and what we're seeing is a series of anti-India steps taken by Dhaka, whether it was releasing terrorist Jashmuddin Rahmani, the chief of terror group who has been plotting attacks on India, or stopping hillside exports. At large, there has been a rise of anti-India sentiment in the country. So then, how do you see India-Bangladesh ties going forward?
Well, the current regime is definitely trying to build bridges with Pakistan, to
Yes.
fight India, basically. I mean, it's not, I'm not saying it's a physical fight, but what kind of message it gives when Hizbut Tahrir is open and into the field, when Ansarullah chief is released. So definitely it will be a security concern for India. The anti-Indian feeling in Bangladesh is very deep and very wide. And right now, this is being fueled by the present government, and especially since Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is in India right now. So they're very scared that anything can happen. She might come back, this sort of thing. So they're trying to fuel anti-Indian feelings, very deep in Bangladesh. Even they're talking about chicken neck and seven sisters and whatnot. So this is unbelievable what's going on in Bangladesh right now. But the relationship between Bangladesh and India is at all-time low.
So, do you think then Bangladesh is on its way to become Pakistan 2.0?
I do not know whether it's going to be becoming Pakistan, but I know that we are heading towards a long-term instability. The progress that Sheikh Hasina in 15 years brought to Bangladesh, that it became an international model, despite all corruption charges and all other things, but the country was stable. But right now, we are heading to a civil conflict. I'm not saying a civil war, maybe, but certainly a civil conflict.
Okay, let me ask you another question about the state of minority within the minority group, that is women. We have seen instances where they've been beaten, forced, and threatened to ascribe to this Islamic code of conduct, like a dress code, something that we've seen in Iran and Afghanistan, but of course not in Bangladesh. So, what's your take on this?
I mean, you have already seen it. I mean, women went to the sea beach with properly clad. It's not like Western clad, but properly clad in the Bangladesh standard, and they were beaten.
Yes.
In broad daylight in Dhaka, in the mega city of Dhaka, allegedly sex workers were beaten. It's been, I mean, we have seen the videos. So, like anywhere in the world, when the fundamentalists come to power, the weaker section of the society, mainly women and the minorities, they bear the brunt. And that is the situation in Bangladesh right now. So you can see who are actually calling the shots. The fundamentalists are, in power with the help of Dr. Yunus. And again, he's responsible for this.
All right, so my last question to you is that Yunus government has promised that it would bring in reforms to conduct elections in the country. So how soon do you think we can see elections taking place in Bangladesh?
Okay, that's a very interesting question. They did not say at any point of time, any time limit. They said once the reforms take place, and then they will decide when the election should be held. So who will decide? Because this is not the government by the people, of the people, or for the people. So they are not
Exactly.
elected people. So they are not accountable to anybody whatsoever. So they will decide. So when the reform is done, so there's no time limit. BNP thought, Bangladesh Nationalist Party, that they will take an advantage of this movement, but unfortunately, as it seems, so they're the they're not in the power circle, and they have a lot of anguish about it. They're actually trying to say something about the election, to create an election environment as soon as possible. But I don't think Dr. Yunus is going to do that, because BNP has some political base. Dr. Yunus doesn't. So I cannot just exactly pinpoint how long it's going to take, but everybody says, not less than in 3 years, more or less everywhere that I have
3 years,
gone
that's
to.
a long time.
A long time. By that time, if the fundamentalists take root into the society, that's going to be, I mean, total breakdown of our society that we have been building since liberation of Bangladesh in 1971.
And what do you think would be the role of army in that process?
That's a very critical question, which I don't have any answer, because uh, usually when the armed forces, Bangladesh had martial laws before, in 1975 and 1981 again, 81, 82. So the first thing that they do is to maintain the law and order. We don't see anything like that in Bangladesh right now. So I don't know about their role, but we believe that they're patriotic segment, the most strongest segment in Bangladesh, and I hope they take necessary action to save this country from a total road to disaster.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Rana, for speaking to us and outlining what's the conditions like for Hindus in Bangladesh, how is Yunus government handling, or if I might add, failing to handle the situation, and how it will impact Indo-Bangladesh ties.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you again. Well, this is me, Ishita Mitra. Stay tuned to India Today Global for more such updates.